The shuttle broke through the clouds of Illyrian, a planet wrapped in endless green jungles and choking mist. From orbit it looked peaceful, a jewel of blue oceans and emerald forests. But every cadet aboard the transport knew the truth. This was no paradise. This was the classroom of nightmares. The alien students sat in silence, watching the jungle stretch below. They had all come from different star systems. Tall insectoid Clictor from the hive worlds, the scaled Dravics with their proud warrior. Heritage, the silver-skinned Erythians, who prided themselves on science and logic. Each species had its own history of power, of survival, of conquest. But here on Illyrianine, none of that mattered. Instructors had told them only one thing. This is where you will meet the apex predator. Learn or die.
Ow.
The shuttle's doors hissed open with a sharp metallic sigh. A wall of humid air slammed into them. The cadets gagged at the smell, the raw, earthy stench of a world alive with predators. Strange cries echoed from deep in the canopy, some screeches high and sharp, others low and guttural. One Clictor. Student muttered, clicking nervously. This world should be sterilized. No empire dares to colonize it. That tells you enough. Another Dravex snorted, his scales glinting in the sun. Nonsense. Oh, we are warriors. No beast can stand against discipline and weapons. The group laughed nervously, finding comfort in arrogance. But the instructors, two grizzled veterans in black command armor, said nothing. They only exchanged glances, their antennae and ridges twitching slightly. As if they were hiding a truth too heavy to speak, the cadets marched down the ramp and onto the muddy ground. Immediately they felt the weight of the jungle. The trees soared like titans, their roots thick enough to crush a tank. Vines hung like serpents, dripping with moisture. Then came the whispers. Not from the jungle, but from the instructors themselves. One of them leaned close to the other and muttered, just loud enough for the cadets to hear. Even fleets avoid this world. They say one predator here can scatter an army. The students froze, their eyes widened. Fleets, armies, that was impossible. Beasts didn't fight starships. Beasts didn't make empires cautious. The Clictor buzzed angrily. Surely this is exaggeration, a myth to frighten younglings. The instructor turned his cold gaze on them and said nothing. That silence was worse than any answer. As they set up camp near a river, tension gave way to old prejudices. The alien cadets began their favorite pastime, mocking humans. The Erythian, with his glowing silver eyes, sneered as he unpacked his scanner. It is strange. They even allowed a human to join this course. Soft skin, brittle bones, so fragile compared to the rest of us. The Dravax hissed in laughter. Humans prey. Species. Their homeworld is barely rated a danger class 3. Most of their predators are nothing but animals. Weak. Clictor, normally silent, clicked their mandibles in amusement. Perhaps the instructors wanted entertainment? To see a human scream when the apex arrives? Their laughter echoed across the riverbank, but it died the moment the human walked into the clearing. He was average by human, standards no taller. Then the Dravax's shoulder, no sharper teeth than the Clictor-esque younglings, no radiant skin like the Erythians. Just a young man, dark hair, steady eyes, a pack slung over one shoulder, and yet something about the way he carried himself silenced the camp. He walked with ease, as though the crushing humidity didn't bother him. His boots sank into the mud, but he never stumbled. His eyes scanned the jungle, not with fear, but with calculation, as if measuring every shadow. Every cry in the distance. The Dravax warrior tried to provoke him. Human, tell us, do you plan to run when the predator comes, or will you hide behind us? The human didn't answer right away. He just looked at the Dravax and smiled. It's not a nervous smile, not a submissive smile, but something else. Quiet confidence. I don't run. Those 3 words struck harder than a roar. The aliens scoffed, but unease had already settled in their minds. That evening, as the twin suns sank behind the horizon, the instructors gathered the cadets around a holographic map. This world has many dangers. Carnivores larger than starships, swarms of venomous creatures that strip flesh in seconds. but only one is recognized across the galaxy as the apex predator. You will observe it, record its behavior, survive long enough to return. The hologram flickered, revealing a creature that made even the proud Dravax recoil. It stood. Tall, six-limbed, armored plates glowing faintly under its skin. Its eyes, 6 of them, burned with a predatory light. Its mouth was lined with rows of teeth designed for crushing bone. The Clictor's mandibles clicked nervously. This is beyond nature, the Erethian scientist whispered. If it can repel fleets, what is its origin? Natural. Engineered. The instructor shut down the hologram. You will find out. At dawn, we march. Night whispers, the jungle came alive with sounds. The distant scream of something being torn apart. The thunder of massive footsteps crushing trees. The air trembled with roars that rattled the cadets' very bones. The Clictor tried to keep his voice steady. They say the apex hunts by sound. If it hears fear in your breathing, it comes. The Dravax laughed, but his scales twitched nervously. Stories. Nothing hunts fear itself. The Erethian whispered, then why do the instructors not sleep? Look at them. They keep their weapons ready, even inside the shield. And indeed, the instructors sat with their plasma rifles across their laps. Scanning the jungle with eyes that never blinked, the human, however, did not sit awake in terror. He sat at the edge of the firelight, sharpening a blade, his expression calm. The others watched him, confused. The Clictor hissed softly. He should be trembling. He should fear what is coming. Ah! The Erethian studied him, trying to read his face. Perhaps. He does not understand the danger. But the Dravax, more sensitive to predator instincts, narrowed his eyes. He had seen that look before. On hunters. On killers. No, he muttered. He understands too well. Morning came with a red sky, the air thick with the smell of blood. Somewhere in the jungle, a colossal roar shook the trees, so loud that leaves fell like rain. The cadets froze, their hearts pounding. Even the bravest among them turned pale. The instructors gave a single command. Form up. Today, you meet the apex predator. The aliens swallowed hard, their arrogance stripped away by the sound of the beast. They checked weapons, adjusted armor, and whispered prayers to gods they had long forgotten. Only the human stood straight, his eyes fixed on the jungle, lips curling into a faint, unreadable smile. And in that moment, a chilling thought spread. Among the alien cadets, perhaps the apex predator was not the most dangerous thing on this planet. Perhaps it was the human walking beside them. The jungle did not wake gently. It roared as the alien cadets formed ranks. The earth beneath their boots trembled. Birds with razor wings exploded from the canopy in panicked swarms. Even the insects fell silent as, though the entire world knew what was coming, the instructors led them down a narrow trail. The students followed nervously, weapons held tight. Their arrogance from yesterday was gone. The sound they had heard before dawn had crushed it. Boom. Another crash of trees. Something massive was moving, each step like a hammer on the ground. The Dravax warrior tried to steady his voice. We have weapons. We have armor. No beast can, he stopped mid-sentence, when a tree ahead simply split in two and fell, its trunk thicker than a starship's hull plate. The forest shook. The Clictor's antennae curled tight against his head. By the hive mind, it is close. Then they saw it at first, only shadows, shapes slipping between the trees, far too large to be real. The light bent oddly around it, as if even the sun feared to touch its hide. Then the head emerged. 6. Glowing eyes burned in the mist. Its snout was long and armored, mouth lined with teeth designed not just to kill, but to grind bone into dust. Plates of natural armor rippled as the creature moved. Each breath was a thunderous hiss, misting the air with heat. The cadets froze. One Erethian whispered, voice breaking, This is what fleets avoid. The instructor said nothing. His eyes were locked on the beast, sweat dripping down. His brow, despite the humid air, the predator stepped fully into the clearing. Its shoulders scraped tree trunks. Its claws tore grooves in the earth. And yet, it did not charge. It simply looked. The Clictor hissed nervously. Why does it not strike? We are prey. It should attack. The Dravex gripped his spear, scales rattling from his trembling hands. Perhaps it toys with us. The Erethian raised his scanner. The device sparked, overloaded, and went dark. He gasped. Its energy signature. It's overwhelming. Number. System can read it. The predator tilted its head, eyes moving slowly across the group. Each alien felt its gaze pierce them. Their hearts pounded, their instincts screamed. This was not an animal. This was death itself given flesh. One cadet dropped his weapon. The sound was loud, metallic. The predator's head snapped toward him. The jungle went silent. It moved not. Fast, not yet. Slowly, deliberately, like a storm approaching. Each step crushed plants, shattered roots, made the ground shake. The cadet who had dropped his weapon scrambled backward, shield raised. The beast's jaws opened slightly, a low. Rumbles spilling out a sound too deep for comfort, more vibration than noise. The instructor barked, "Hold! Do not run," but fear overpowered training. One Clictor screamed and bolted into the trees. The predator's head whipped around, and in one terrifying leap, it vanished into the jungle after him. The others could only hear it. The snap of trees, the shriek of the Clictor, cut off in a heartbeat. Then, silence. A moment later, the predator emerged again, dragging nothing. Its jaws were wet. The cadets shivered. None dared to move. And then, something even more shocking happened. The human stepped forward, while the others crouched and shook. The human cadet walked calmly into the open, toward the beast. His face showed no panic, only focus. His breathing was steady, controlled. The Dravax hissed in disbelief. He is insane, the Erethian's voice cracked. He approaches death itself. Why? The predator lowered its head, growling. Its eyes locked on the human. Claws dug into the soil, prepared to strike. The human stopped moving. He planted his feet. His hands did not reach for a weapon. He simply stood, stared. Seconds passed. The jungle held its breath. Then the unthinkable happened. The predator stepped back. Its claws relaxed. Its growl faded. Slowly, it tilted its head, and then lowered it, as though in submission. The alien cadets gasped. The Dravax fell to his knees, whispering no creature yields. Not to prey, not to weaklings. The Erethian stammered. This should be impossible. Nothing makes the apex predator retreat. And yet there it was. The predator, the beast that had torn through fleets, had bowed its head before a fragile, soft-skinned human. The Clictor shouted angrily, desperate to explain what he had seen. It must be wounded. Yes, that is it. Injured, weak, but the predator's eyes flashed and it snarled, making the Clictor collapse in terror. No, it was not weak. It was not hurt. It had simply chosen not to fight the human. The instructors exchanged glances. Their expressions were unreadable, but one of them whispered so low only the closest cadets heard it remembers. The aliens turned sharply. Remembers what? One demanded. The instructor said nothing. The human finally spoke, voice steady. You think I'm the prey. But you've been looking at the wrong species all along. His words carried through the clearing, echoing against the trees. The alien cadets shivered. The predator backed further away, retreating into the shadows of the jungle. Its eyes glowed once more in the distance, not in hunger, not in rage, but in recognition. Then it vanished. The silence that followed was heavier than any roar. The cadets collapsed in relief. Gasping for air they hadn't realized they were holding, their bodies shook, not from exhaustion, but from the knowledge of what they had witnessed, the Dravex muttered, his pride shattered. This cannot be. We are warriors. We are bred to fight. And yet, that thing, the Erethian finished his sentence with a whisper. That thing fears a human. Dot. Instructors finally spoke. You have seen what no simulation can teach? Tomorrow, you will learn why. But the alien students already knew. Deep in their hearts, in their instincts, a terrible truth had planted itself like a seed. The apex. Predator was not the most dangerous creature on Illyria 9, the most dangerous. The creature had been standing beside them all along. The human. The jungle was quiet again. Too quiet. The alien cadets huddled together, their hearts still racing after what they had just seen. The apex predator, the beast that crushed fleets, the monster that made empires avoid Illyria 9, had retreated. Not from weapons, not from shields, not from alien warriors bred for combat. It had backed away from a human. The silence hung, heavy, broken only by the drip of water from broad jungle leaves. Each cadet stared at the human in disbelief, waiting for him to explain what had just happened. But he did not speak, simply stood there, feet planted firmly in the soil, eyes scanning the shadows where the predator had vanished. And in that stillness, he looked more terrifying than the beast itself. The Clictor was the first to break the silence, his mandibles clacking nervously. This is wrong. Beasts do not bow. Beasts do not yield. The Dravax warrior growled in frustration. His scales rattled as he slammed his spear into the mud. It makes no sense. That was no act of fear. That was recognition. As though the predator. He trailed off, eyes narrowing at the human. Go. As though it saw an equal. The Erethian scientist trembled, gripping his dead scanner. His voice cracked as he whispered, or worse. It saw a superior. The words cut through the group like a blade. The cadets demanded answers. What are you? The Clictor hissed. What trick did you use? The Erethian pressed. Tell us, human. How did you survive? The Dravox barked. But the human said nothing. He did not gloat. He did not boast. He did not even turn to look at them. He stood, perfectly still, eyes fixed on the jungle, as though daring the predator to return. It was not the silence of fear. It was not the silence of confusion. It was the silence of control. The instructors watched quietly. One of them smirked faintly, but said nothing, and that silence only deepened the mystery. The instructor finally broke the tension. You will. All face the apex. One by one, the cadets gasped. What? The Erethian cried. You saw what it did. Slaughtered Clictor as though he was nothing. Instructor's voice was like iron. You came here to learn. And you will. Learn through fear. He turned to the Dravax. You step forward. The Dravax's scales twitched nervously. His pride as a warrior demanded he obey, but even he hesitated. Slowly he moved into the clearing where the predator had stood. The jungle stirred. Branches cracked. The predator's glowing eyes reappeared. In the shadows, the Dravax lifted his spear, growling defiantly. Face me, beast, the predator roared. The sound was so deep, so powerful, that it sent shockwaves through the trees. The Dravax stumbled backward, knees buckling. Its weapon fell from his grasp. The predator stepped forward, teeth bared. But before it struck, the instructor barked a command. Enough. Return. The predator stopped, then slowly faded back into the shadows. The Dravax returned, humiliated, his pride broken. His body shook, not from wounds, but from the memory of that roar, one by one. The alien students were forced to step forward. The Clictor lasted only seconds before collapsing too. The ground screeching in terror. The Erethian tried to analyze the creature with words and logic, but when the predator moved close, his composure shattered into screams. Even the proudest cadets could not withstand the predator's presence. Every time it came near, their instincts betrayed them. Their knees gave way, their courage dissolved. Each failure only deepened their shame. Finally, the instructor looked at the human. Your turn. The cadets leaned forward, desperate to see what would happen. They wanted to prove the first encounter had been a fluke, that the predator's retreat had been an accident, The human stepped into the clearing. He did not ready a weapon. He did not take a stance. He simply stood. The predator emerged again. Its body was massive, towering, its 6 eyes burning like suns. The jungle trembled with its weight. It roared the same roar that had broken every alien cadet before. Birds scattered. Trees shook. The ground itself vied, but the human did not move. He stood perfectly still, not frozen in fear, but anchored. Like stone, his breathing was calm, steady. His eyes locked on the beasts. The predator growled louder, stepping closer, its jaws opened, teeth dripping with saliva. Its breath rolled over him like fire. Still, the human did not move. Seconds passed. Long, heavy seconds. Then impossibly, the predator lowered its head again. Not in attack, not in hunger, but in respect. And once more, stepped back. The cadets could not believe what they had seen. It had submitted. Stammered, "Twice? It cannot be chance." The Clictor hissed. The Dravak shook his head, eyes wide. No predator yields twice. It knows. It knows the human is. He could not finish the sentence. The instructor finally spoke. His voice carried weight like a truth too dangerous to reveal. "Now you begin to understand." Around the campfire that night, the cadets whispered among themselves. Some tried to explain it away. Perhaps humans carry toxins. Perhaps their smell confuses the beast. Others whispered old legends, stories of death, worlds, planets, so brutal that even predators bowed to their native species. One Clictor muttered, "I heard once that humans hunted in packs, that they would chase prey until it collapsed from exhaustion. No beast could escape them." Erythian countered, "Nonsense. That is primitive myth." Yet his eyes betrayed doubt. The Dravaks, however, spoke no words. He simply stared at the human across the fire, his pride shattered, his instincts screaming. He had fought predators all his life. He knew what submission looked like, and what he had seen today was not luck. It was instinct. The predator recognized the human as something greater, as the fire crackled. The human finally spoke. His voice was calm, almost casual. "You all came here to see the apex predator. You thought it was the monster in the jungle." He looked at each of them in turn. His eyes reflected the firelight, sharp and steady. "But you're wrong. The predator is me." The aliens shivered. The instructor said nothing. And somewhere deep in the jungle, the apex predator roared again, not in challenge, but in echo, as though it agreed. The campfire burned low, casting long shadows across the jungle floor. Alien. Cadets whispered in fear, their voices shaking. The apex predator had bowed. Not once, twice, and not to them, not to weapons, not to fleets, but to a single human. They had come to study a beast. Instead, they discovered something far more terrifying. And as the night deepened, the question none of them wanted to ask began to spread through the group. If the galaxy's apex predator feared humans, what chance did the rest of them have? Jungle never truly slept. Strange cries echoed in the distance, and glowing insects buzzed like sparks in the dark. But inside the circle of firelight, the real tension was not from the jungle. It came from the cadets themselves. The Erythian scientist paced nervously, claws clicking against the stone. It does not make sense. Predators obey instinct, not reason. Yet this one acted as if it recognized the human's nature. The Clictor huddled with two of his own kind, mandibles clattering. Recognition? No. It was fear. I saw its eyes. It looked at the human, and it feared him. The Dravak's warrior stayed silent, fists clenched. His pride was wounded deeper than any spear could pierce. He had trained to be a fighter all his life, yet his knees had buckled at the predator's roar. The human, unarmed, had stood like stone, and that truth gnawed at him like a wound he could not close. The cadets turned to their instructors, desperate for answers, but the instructors offered none. He spoke only in clipped commands: eat, rest, prepare. One instructor stared into the flames with a faint smile, as if enjoying their confusion. Another muttered only once, barely loud enough for the cadets. "To hear now you begin to see why fleets whisper about humans." But when pressed for more, he said nothing. That silence was worse than any answer. The human sat apart from the others, sharpening a simple knife with a stone. He did not speak. He did not explain. He just sat, calm, steady, his eyes glancing now and then into the dark jungle. Every flick of the stone across the blade echoed in the cadets' ears, a soft rasp, again and again. The sound grew unbearable, because each of them realized the same thing. The human wasn't sharpening that blade for the beast. He was sharpening it for something else. None of them dared to ask what. By the next morning, the cadets were divided. The Clicker refused to go near the human, whispering that he carried a curse. They avoided his shadow, clicking prayers too. Their ancestors, the Erythian scientist, tried to cling to logic, muttering to himself, "It is pheromones. Yes, some natural chemical. Beast detected it. That must be it." His voice was unconvincing, even to his own ears. The Dravaks, once proud and loud, now watched the human with narrowed eyes. Not with awe, not with fear, but with growing hatred. He could not accept what he had seen. He needed to prove himself stronger, and the human. He never acknowledged their stares. He ate in silence. He moved in silence. His calm presence was heavier than any roar. That night, while the human slept, the cadets whispered again. One Clicker trembled as he spoke. "I heard tales of a war long ago, a human ship lost on a death world. The survivors lived, hunting beasts larger than war machines. They say the planet itself yielded to them." The Erythian shook his head violently. "Fairy tales. No evidence." But another cadet leaned in, lowering his voice. "I heard. Humans fight wars by chasing prey until it collapses. No ship, no weapon, just pursuit. They do not stop until the prey falls dead from exhaustion."
Ow.
The group fell silent, because in their minds, they remembered how the human had stood, unmoving, endless, patient as the stone itself. And suddenly, those old stories didn't sound so foolish. The instructors called the next trial at dawn. "You will enter the jungle. In pairs survive, return by dusk." Panic spread instantly. None wanted to face the predator again. None wanted to be away from the safety of the fire. The Dravak slammed his chest. "I will not hide. Pair me with the human. I will prove who the true predator is." The Clicker hissed nervously. "You are insane. To walk with it is to invite death." The Dravak sneered. "Better death than shame." The human said nothing. He simply nodded once when chosen, and so the pairs left, one by one, into the vast green jaws of the jungle. The Dravak strode ahead, spear in hand, forcing the human to follow. The air was thick with the smell of damp earth and the sound of unseen creatures moving in the brush. "You think yourself strong because a beast bowed to you," the Dravak snarled. "But beasts are animals. I am no animal. I am a warrior. When the moment comes, I will not kneel. I will not break." The human gave no reply. He only kept walking, eyes scanning the tree line. That silence burned the Dravak's pride like fire. The jungle snapped alive. A roar shook the branches above. Apex predator returned, crashing through the trees like living thunder. The Dravak roared back, charging with his spear. He thrust it into the beast's hide, but the spear splintered like glass against its armor. The predator swatted him aside with one claw, throwing him into the dirt. The Dravak coughed blood, his body trembling. The beast turned to finish him, but once again the human stepped forward. He did not raise his knife. He did not shout. He simply stood still, eyes locked on the beast. The predator halted. Its roar died. In its throat, its claws lowered, and slowly it turned away once more, fading into the jungle shadows. The Dravak gasped, rage and humiliation consuming him. "No, no, it cannot be. I am the warrior. I am the predator." He stumbled to his feet, spitting blood, His eyes burned with fury as he pointed at the human. You? What are you? The human finally spoke, voice calm, almost quiet. I am what your galaxy fears. The Dravax froze, the weight of those words sinking in. When they returned to camp, the others stared in silence. They could see the truth in the Dravax's broken stance, and for the first time, none dared to laugh at humans again. That night, the cadets lay awake, listening to the jungle. Every shadow, every sound reminded them of the predator. But what haunted them most was not the beast, it was the human, because the predator could be explained. It was flesh, claws, and hunger. But the human, he was something else, something the galaxy had never understood. And in the silence of the night, one thought spread like wildfire among the cadets. If the apex predator bows to a human, then what else will? The jungle fell silent. Not even insects dared to sing. Around the campfire, alien cadets sat frozen, their minds replaying what they had seen again and again. The apex predator lowering its head before the human. For many, fear had become obsession. For others, it was madness. But when the instructors finally spoke, their words shattered the last of the cadets' certainty. You came here to study the apex predator, the lead instructor said, voice cold as stone. But you are blind. The predator is not your lesson. The human is. And with those words, the cadets realized the true nightmare. They were not here to learn about beasts. They were here to learn about death worlds. The fire cracked. Shadows danced. Every cadet leaned forward, waiting. The Clicker rubbed his mandibles together nervously. The Erythian scientist scribbled notes, claws shaking. Even the Dravax, now blood still on his lips from his failed stand, glared into the flames with desperate hunger for answers. The human sat apart again, his knife resting beside him, expression unreadable. And finally the instructor began to speak. Across the stars, the instructor said, there are worlds too violent, too dangerous for colonization. We call them death worlds. On these planets, everything that moves is predator. Every breath, every step, is a fight for survival. Most species cannot last a single day. Fleets that land never return. A murmur ran through the cadets. The Clicker hissed. Then why let humans live there? Why not evacuate them to safer colonies? The instructor's eyes narrowed. Because humans were not placed there. They were born there. Gasps rippled through the group. On a death world, the instructor continued, the soil poisons the weak. The skies strike with storms that tear cities apart. Beasts stalk every shadow. Yet humans rose on such a world. They did not die. They thrived. Erythian scientist muttered, impossible. No sentient species should evolve under such pressure. Natural selection would. Yes, the instructor cut him off. Natural selection did. That is why humans are what they are. Their very existence is a product of survival through endless war against nature itself. The cadets shivered. Suddenly, every joke they had made about humans being soft-skinned prey felt hollow. Another instructor spoke, his voice low. You saw how the predator bowed. That was not chance. On their world, humans faced predators just as fierce. They learned patience. They learned endurance. And most of all, they learned to become predators themselves. He pointed at the human who still sat silent. Do you understand why the beast feared him? It was instinct. The predator recognized something older, darker. It saw not prey, but kin, and it bowed to the greater predator. The cadet's blood ran cold. The Clicker chattered in terror. No, it cannot be. If what you say is true, if humans are death world born, then they are not just another species. They are monsters. The Dravax snarled. Not monsters. Warriors. That is why the predator bowed. It saw strength. But his voice lacked its usual pride, almost, as if he were trying to convince himself. The Erythian shook his head rapidly. If this knowledge spreads to the wider galaxy, chaos will follow. Fleets will rise to contain them. Instructor smirked. Contain humans? Do you think no? Fleet has tried? Tell me, Why do you think whole navies whisper in fear, but never declare war? The answer hung unspoken, but every cadet understood. Fleets had tried. Fleets had failed. The instructors exchanged glances. Then one leaned closer to the cadets. His voice dropped to a whisper. There was a war. Long before you were born. An alien empire thought humans weak. They invaded their world. But the war dragged on. Year after year, decades, until the empire itself collapsed. The Clicker gasped, collapsed, against primitives. Yes, the instructor said simply. Because humans do not surrender. They do not stop. They will bleed. They will burn. But they will fight until the last breath. When the last breath is gone, another rises to take their place. Entire. Empires have learned this truth too late. A heavy silence crushed the group. The cadets looked at the human with new eyes. Not weak, not prey. Something else entirely. For the first time that night, the human broke his silence. His voice was calm, quiet, but carried across the fire. Your kind has claws. Others have armor. Some spit acid or wield poison. We have nothing.
Nothing but
our will, and that is enough. He lifted his knife, its edge glowing faintly in the firelight. On my world, we hunted beasts that make your apex predator look like a child. Not because we were stronger, not because we were faster, but because we never stopped. The beast bows, because it knows I will chase it until it falls. The fire crackled. The cadets shivered. Even the instructors looked uneasy. The Erythian's note slipped from his claws, whispered, "It is true. Everything they said is true. And worse." Clicker wailed, covering his face. Then what are we to them? Prey. The Dravik stared at the human with fire in his eyes, but not hatred this time. It was something else, an unwilling respect, recognition. No, he said slowly, not prey, allies or enemies, nothing in between. The campfire dimmed, the night pressed close. And for the first time since arriving, the cadets did not fear the jungle's predator, they feared the human. As the group settled into restless silence, the instructors gave one final warning. Remember this night well. You came here to learn of the apex predator.
No?
But you leave with a lesson far greater. Humans are not prey. They are not warriors. They are survivors. And survival is the deadliest weapon in the galaxy. The human smiled faintly at the words, but said nothing. His eyes remained fixed on the jungle shadows, as if listening for something the others could not hear, and deep within the cadets' hearts, a single, terrifying thought began to grow. If this is only one human, what happens when the galaxy meets? Them all? The cadets were told it was only an exercise. Track the apex predator. Learn its movements. Bring back proof you survived the encounter. But deep inside, every alien knew the truth. This was no lesson. This was a test. And in the jungle shadows, where even predators walked silently, cadets felt something worse than fear. They felt they were being hunted, not by the beast, not by the jungle, but by the human walking among them. The cadets set. Out in groups of 3, their weapons glowing faintly in the dark. The jungle was alive with whispers and rustling leaves. The night air was heavy, pressing on their chests. The Dravak's warrior took the lead, his blade ready. The Clicker crawled low, his many eyes darting across the undergrowth. The Erythian scribbled nervous notes even now, documenting every strange plant and creature, and behind them all, silent as a shadow, walked the human. He carried no scanner, no heavy weapon, just his knife and a torch that he never lit. His eyes alone were enough. Hours passed. The cadets found Track's huge claw marks on the ground, broken branches, and the stench of blood. It passed here, the Clicker whispered. The Dravak snorted. Then we are close. Tonight I claim its head. But the human crouched near the prince and shook his head. His voice was quiet, but it cut through the dark. No, these are old. The predator moved days ago. What you smell isn't its prey. It's a warning, the Clicker hissed. Warning? From a beast? The human didn't answer. He just straightened, eyes narrowing at the shadows. It knows we're here. Moments later, the jungle screamed. Something massive crashed through the trees. The cadets scattered, weapons raised. A blur of muscle and fangs tore past them, slamming into the ground with earth-shaking force. The apex predator. Its eyes glowed like embers, its roar ripping through the night. The cadets froze in terror. Every instinct told them to run. But then the impossible happened. The beast lowered its head, not toward the cadets, but toward the human. Again, it stalked slowly in a circle, muscles tense. Yet its eyes never left. Him. The human's knife gleamed faintly. His voice was calm. It's not hunting you. It's hunting me. The Clictor backed away, trembling. Why does it always choose you? The Erethian stammered. Because it knows. He is the rival. We are nothing. The Dryvax, pride wounded, roared and charged at the beast. His blade slashed, but the predator sidestepped with terrifying speed. A swipe of its claw threw him into the mud. The predator didn't even kill him. It didn't need to. Its eyes returned to the human. It's always only the human. The instructor's voices echoed in the cadets' heads. You came to study the predator, but your lesson is the human. And now, they finally understood. The predator wasn't stalking them. It was teaching them, showing them, warning them. The human stepped forward, knife ready, gaze locked with the beast. His voice carried a deadly calm. This world doesn't test strength. It tests will. That's why it looks at me, not you. Because it knows I will never stop. The predator snarled, circling him. And in that moment, the cadets realized the real hunt was not beast versus cadets. It was beast versus human. And they were just witnesses. The Clictor is cracked under pressure. We cannot fight this. We cannot survive this. The human draws its wrath, leave him. Let the beast take him. The Erethian shook his head. You fool. If the predator cannot take him, what hope do you have if he is gone? The Dravak staggered back to his feet, his pride in ruins, but his eyes burning with reluctant respect. Does not fight like us. He is the predator. The group split in whispers, fear crawling inside their minds. Stay near the human, or abandon him to save themselves. But their choice was irrelevant. The jungle itself had already chosen. The apex predator lunged. Trees shattered as its massive body struck forward, claws raised. The cadets screamed, but the human didn't run. He rolled low, blade flashing. The predator's claw tore through the ground where he had stood, sparks flying from stone. The cadets watched in disbelief. The human wasn't stronger. He wasn't faster. But he moved with a precision that no other species dared. Each motion said one thing. I've done this before. He had fought predators like this his whole life. The fight wasn't fair. It wasn't equal. But it wasn't impossible. The struggle ended in silence. The human pressed his blade against the predator's throat, breath steady, eyes unblinking. For a long, terrible moment, nothing moved. Then, slowly, the predator lowered itself to the ground. Its growl turned into a rumble, almost like submission, and then it backed away, into the shadows. Into the jungle? Gone. The cadets collapsed, trembling. The human wiped his blade clean and turned to them. His expression was calm, almost bored. This was not my hunt, he said. It was yours. But you were never the prey. You were the lesson. Cadets stared in silence, unable to answer, some with terror, some with awe. The jungle, once alive with screams, was silent again. And in that silence, one truth echoed louder than any roar. The predator had chosen its rival, not the strongest. Alien, not the proudest warrior, but the human. And if the galaxy ever forgot this truth, they would remember it the hard way. The Dravix warrior limped back to camp, his wounds still bleeding. He spat on the ground, glaring at the human. You stole my hunt. The Clictor hissed in agreement. Yes, the predator should have been ours to conquer. Instead, you made us look weak. But the Erethian scholar shook his head violently. His notes were trembling in his claws. No, don't you see? We were never its rivals. only the human was. If it saw us, it would have killed us in an instant. It held back for him. The campfire crackled, sparks dancing in the night. Around it, every cadet's eyes reflected fire and fear. The human didn't argue, sat apart, sharpening his knife with steady strokes. His face was calm, but his silence was heavier than words. Every scrape of blade against stone made the aliens twitch. Finally, one of the reptilian cadets blurted out, "Why does it always bow to you?" "What are you?" The human looked up. His gaze was steady, cold. "I'm just a man." The Clicker slammed a claw into the dirt. "Lies. You're more dangerous than any of us. You're hiding something." The Dravax growled, stepping closer. "Maybe he is the predator." That night the camp split. Faction 1. The Admirers. The Erythian and a few younger cadets believed the human was their only chance to survive. They followed him silently, taking notes, whispering his every move. To them, he was proof of a legend, that humans were the galaxy's hidden apex species. Faction 2. The Skeptics. The Clicker and several warriors resented him. Their pride was shattered. They whispered in the dark that the human had cheated them, that he had made them look like prey. Faction 3. The Watchers. The Dravax. And others neither admired nor hated him. They feared him. They stayed close, but not too close. Like prey shadowing a predator, waiting to see if it would strike again. The human, for his part, didn't choose a side. He simply sharpened his blade and waited for the next test. When the camp slept, the Clicker crept away with 2 others. Their whispers were sharp as knives. The predator listens to him. It ignores us. If we want to prove our strength, we must kill him first. Another clicked nervously. But if he is stronger than the beast, the Clicker snapped back, then we are already dead. It's better to die fighting him than crawling behind him. Their plan was set. The fracture was no longer whispers. It was war brewing in the shadows. At dawn, the instructors returned. Their voices boomed across the clearing. "Cadets, you have seen the predator. You have felt its power. Now you must prove your unity, for only together can your species claim a place in this galaxy." The cadets glanced at one another. Unity. Impossible now. The instructors announced the final challenge. "Tomorrow, you will face the predator again, as one unit. Pass or perish." The words struck like thunder. The human said nothing. He only tied his blade tighter to his belt and walked into the trees. That night was worse than any before. Cadets no longer spoke as a group. They whispered in pairs, in factions, in secret. The admirers watched the human from a distance, sketching his movements, asking quiet questions he never answered. The skeptics sharpened their weapons, eyes burning with resentment. They no longer cared about the predator. They wanted the human dead. The watchers stayed awake, guarding their backs even from their own allies. Every spark of the fire looked like a fuse waiting to ignite deep into the night. It happened. The Clicker lunged, a blur of claws and rage straight at the human's throat. But before the blade could strike, the human moved. Not with fear, not even with surprise, just cold, sharp precision. In one heartbeat, the attacker was on the ground, knife at his throat. Camp froze. The human's voice was low, but every cadet heard it. "You think killing me will make you strong?" "No, it will make you prey." The Clicker trembled. For the first time in his life, he looked like the thing he hated most. Prey. The human released him, shoving him into the dirt. The message was clear. He could have killed him. He chose not to, and that mercy was more terrifying than violence. By morning, the camp was broken beyond repair. Some cadets now looked at the human with awe, as if he was their commander. Others glared with hatred, their pride bleeding out of them like open wounds. The fracture was no longer hidden. It was open, raw, and growing. And tomorrow, when the predator returned, the cadets knew one thing: they might face the beast together, but they would never stand as one. The instructors watched from the trees, their faces unreadable. One whispered to the other, "It has begun." "The galaxy's future isn't decided by the predator," the other replied. "No. It will be decided by whether they can live with the human or die because of him. The jungle roared in the distance, the predator's call echoing once more. And this time, the cadets weren't only afraid of the beast, they were afraid of each other. The jungle was awake. Every branch shook. Every shadow moved. And in the heart of the darkness, a roar split the air. The cadets froze. The apex predator was coming again. But this time, the question was not whether they would survive the beast. The real question was, could they survive each other? When half the camp wanted the human dead and the other half trusted only him, the predator would not wait for them to decide. The ground trembled. Trees snapped like brittle sticks. Through the mist, the colossal shadow appeared. Breathing fire-hot air, eyes glowing like molten stone, the cadets felt their knees weaken. The Dravax muttered, "It should not exist." The Clictor warriors gripped their spears, but their hands shook. The Erythian scholar whispered, "Watch, it will bow to him again." All eyes turned to the human. He stood tall, calm, one hand resting on his blade, the other steady at his side. He did not move. The predator stopped 10 paces away. Its chest rose and fell, each breath a hurricane. Then, slowly, lowered its massive head. A bow. The cadets gasped. The predator acknowledged. No one else. Only the human, the Clictor shouted, rage breaking his fear. Enough. This is a trick. He controls the beast. Another roared, "He is the predator in disguise." The admirers argued back, "No. He is the only reason we live. Without him, we are already dead." The camp turned into chaos. Cadets screamed, pointed weapons at each other, and some stepped toward the human as if to strike. The predator rumbled, the ground quaking, reacting to their anger. The human raised his hand. "Stop." The single word cut through every voice. Even the predator stilled. The human looked around the circle, eyes hard and sharp. "You call yourselves warriors, scholars, hunters, but you are nothing if you cannot stand together. The predator bows to me not because I am stronger, but because I am not afraid to face it." He pointed to the trees. "Fear is what makes you prey. Pride is what makes you blind. Both will kill you." The Clictor hissed, "You're no teacher. To us, human." The human stepped closer, blade flashing in the firelight. "No, I am your lesson." The predator roared again, louder, shaking the earth. It lunged forward not at the human, but at the group. Claws the size of swords tore the ground. The cadets scattered in panic. The Dravax swung his axe. But the blow bounced off its hide. The Erythian fired his plasma. But it only angered the beast. The predator turned on them, jaws snapping until the human leapt forward. He struck its snout. With his blade, not to kill, but to redirect. The beast snarled, eyes locking on him. It paused, then pulled back. The cadets watched, stunned. The predator could slaughter them all, yet it listened to him. The human shouted back to the group, "Fight with me, not against me." The cadets had no choice. The admirers rallied first, forming a line beside the human. Their weapons fired in, striking at the predator's weaker flanks. The watchers followed, pushing fear aside. Finally, even the skeptics, driven by pride and desperation, joined the fight for the first time. They moved as one. The human directed them like a commander. "Left, now, shields up, strike the Lego." The predator roared, snapping trees in fury, but the cadets no longer scattered. They moved together, weaving attack and defense in rhythm. And every time the predator tried to break their line, the human was there, steady, unyielding, forcing the beast back. Hours felt like minutes. The cadets were bloodied, exhausted, but alive. Finally, the predator slowed. Its breath came heavy, eyes glowing not with rage, but recognition. It lowered its head again, not just to the human, but to the whole group. Jungle went silent. The cadets stood in shock. The Erythian whispered, We did it. Together." The human lowered his blade. Now you understand, it was never about killing it. Predator was never the enemy. It was the test. The instructors stepped forward, their hidden observation cloaks dropping. You have passed, one announced. The Predator is the galaxy's final measure. It bows only to courage, and it bows only to unity. Tonight, you learned both. The cadets looked at each other, once divided, now bonded by survival. The Clicker, still panting, bowed his head to the human. I was wrong. Without you, we were already dead. The human only nodded. Without all of you, I was alone. Remember that. As dawn rose over the jungle, the Predator vanished into the mist, leaving the cadets behind. They were no longer just students. They were survivors. The Erethian scholar closed his journal with trembling claws, his last words written. The galaxy's greatest predator is not the beast we faced. It is the human spirit, unyielding, fearless, and impossible to break. The cadets stared at the human one last time, awe and fear mixing in their eyes. The instructors spoke the closing words. You came to learn about predators, but the lesson you leave with is this. Humans are not prey. They are the test by which all others will be measured. The jungle returned to silence, but somewhere beyond the stars, whispers spread. Whispers that on one forgotten planet the galaxy's apex predator had bowed. Not once, but twice. And each whisper ended the same way. If humans are truly different, what happens when the galaxy finally takes notice?